It is episode 13 of the SEC Football Hour. I'm Chase Robinson. That is Chris Lee. And we're excited to be with you because guess what? Games have been played. We have seen all 16 SEC football teams on the field. And Chris, it was just so great. Started Thursday night. We had two SEC teams Thursday, one Friday, full day Saturday, one Sunday night. It was just a full weekend of SEC football.
It was, and it wasn't the schedule maybe you wanted, but I feel like in even some of those blowouts, you saw some teams do some things that you kind of wanted to see. So I feel like, thank God we finally had some football, and I think we're here to maybe try to extract some meaning from it.
We will do so. But right after we talk about BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on a $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, you can head over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker or one of the over 150 slots games. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. So typically we start with some SEC news and notes. We're going to kind of use this as talk about what we learned from the weekend of SEC football. Chris, I'll let you go first. What's one thing you learned this weekend?
Well, look, I think one of the topics we had in the offseason is Georgia as dominant as a lot of the predictive models are showing. You saw if you look at like points above average, Georgia was consistently 3, 4, 5 points above the field. And this is a really hard time to do that in. We have talked about how much parity there is in college football. And just a reminder, this time, or not this time a year ago, but at the end of last season, you had Ohio State was number one in the playoff rankings, got beat. Georgia was number one in the playoff rankings, got beat. Both those late in November. Neither made the playoff because of the parity that we see in college football. So it doesn't feel like a time where a team should be standing out 3, 4, 5 points ahead of the pack. But that's where Georgia was in the preseason. And boy, I think the way the Bulldogs just methodically took Clemson apart and the things that you're hearing. I was listening to our friend Tyler Siskey. He and Neil McCready, who's also a friend, have a great show, the McCready and Siskey podcast. And they were saying that the word from Georgia is they think this is the best team they've ever had.
Wow.
Kind of hard to argue with it after week one.
It certainly is hard to argue with it. And I mean, it's going to take a lot. There's no doubt to bring Georgia down. They're so good, so dominant. Something I learned, I feel like, is that Ole Miss made the necessary improvements on
Yeah.
defense. I mean, just to shut out Furman. And I know people say, "Oh, it's Furman." Furman's not a bad team, and I mean, Ole Miss just had their way with them. They stopped them. Offense looked great, but I feel like Ole Miss is finally the complete team. Now, I know we'll learn more about them as they move through their schedule. Um, but I just feel like this is the most complete team that Lane Kiffin has had at Ole Miss. Just like we've been talking about the
Yeah.
preseason, we're seeing it for real, I feel like now.
Well, we spend a lot of time really diving into rosters. We get a lot of our stuff out later than most people, and that's because I really want to take the time to compare. Because this is the SEC, Chase. You look at a team and go, man, they are stacked. And you look at somebody else's roster, and it's kind of a hold my beer situation. And the more that you dug into that defense, the more you realized how much they had added. They got two guys in Princely, I'm not even going to attempt his last name because I always botch it, but you know what I mean. The transfer from
Yeah.
Florida and Walter Nolan, that one I can say. Um, that we're getting preseason All American love. You've got what 5 or 6 other guys: JJ Pegues, Jared Ivey, Chris Paul, Isaiah Hamilton, Trey Amos, John Saunders, who all got some level of All SEC mention somewhere else. No, maybe that was fourth team on Phil Steele or whatever, but it's validation that still puts you in the top quarter of the league at your position. When I really saw that, it really popped to me. And I think we're just kind of used to looking at Lane Kiffin as a defensive guru and not really thinking about the defense being a factor. But when you
Yeah.
really dug into that roster, it's like, okay, if you believe the hype that you're getting a lot of places, this defense is going to be a factor. And boy, was it.
It was. They're going to be fun to watch this year for sure. Chris, what's something else you took away from the weekend?
I think the overall dominance and playoff contention level of the league, I do, again, people have heard me talk about it. I do 5 sources. It's a points above average model that they're all people that you've heard of. It's Sagarin, Team Rankings, FPI, SP Plus, and Kelly Ford, and just kind of average those. And they all come about it differently. But one thing I noted, I'm going to read you the top 10 here in the
Okay.
model. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Alabama. Number 3, Texas. So first 3 teams right now, all SEC teams, followed by Ohio State, Penn State, Ole Miss at 6. I think that's too low, but I think the model will catch up with how good this team is. Notre Dame, followed by Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Missouri to round out the top 10. That's what? 7 SEC teams in the top 10. So you got
Yeah.
at least that many playoff contenders. If you want to go on further, LSU at 15, Auburn at 16. Hey, we never really talked about Auburn as a playoff contender. And I don't want to go crazy after a demolition of Alabama A&M, but the computers really like that team. We've talked about the schedule being favorable. I think we went into the game thinking we might have as many as 9 playoff contenders. A&M kind of probably dropped off that list in my estimation with the way that the passing offense didn't look so hot. And a lot of that credit goes to Notre Dame. But maybe you got Auburn jumping up and replacing them. I mean, this just screams that this is a dominant league. You don't want to take too much away after week 1, especially with some of the opponents. But it feels to me that the computers are saying, hey, this league is full of playoff contenders.
Yeah, it is. Really liked what I saw from a lot of the SEC teams, and I think something else I took away, Chris, was Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
They win against Virginia Tech. I know you were there covering that game. I just feel like we're finally at the point where Vanderbilt can get some respect. Like they might not be the last team in the SEC. I think they've made the improvements that they need, especially at quarterback. I loved watching Diego Pavia play
Yeah.
on Saturday. He was fun to watch, and if they can keep that up, I think they may could get some respect. But Vanderbilt definitely stood out to me in the way they were able to win that game.
Chase, people are kind of used to Vanderbilt being bad, but that was last year was bad even for Vanderbilt. They
Yeah.
lost all 9 games against Power 5 teams. All of them were by at least 16 points. They weren't even close. And Clark Lee had a plan. He said, we're going to get more involved in the portal. We're going to try to get more involved with NIL, and we're going to change a bunch of stuff. He changed his strength and conditioning coach. They changed their special teams coach. And they didn't want to do that. They lost a good one I think, to Penn State or Syracuse. I can't remember where. And then they changed both coordinators. Clark Lee put himself in charge of the defense, and they brought in the New Mexico State staff. What they said, they realized at the end of last season, hey, we cannot line up and compete against these teams without something to throw them off. They said we need a running quarterback. We need an offense that is harder to figure out. And if you watched him, Chase, they're fun to watch. Diego
Yeah.
Pavia is one of the most fun players to watch in this league. Some people have kind of given the Johnny Manziel comps. He's not as skilled as Manziel was, but he kind of plays ball like that where you never know what's going to happen next. It's like watching a point guard run their offense. They decided we need to get better schematically on both sides of the ball. We need different philosophies that are going to throw teams off, and we need to get stronger. They fired their strength and conditioning coach. He got 4 sacks against Virginia Tech. And their
Wow.
offensive line was a lot better. Let's not go crazy, but that team, I think probably Vanderbilt's probably the most improved team in the league over where it was a year ago.
For sure. There's no doubt about that. Really was impressed by the Commodores. We'll see if they can keep it up this year. But that's some things we learned over the weekend when it comes to SEC football. And again, you look at some of these matchups. It's hard to learn things from them, but we'll keep learning about these teams.
Well, speaking of change, sometimes you need a clear head to assess what you're doing. And maybe that's what Clark Lee did. Maybe the credit goes to MagicMind. Maybe Clark Lee's been pounding these things. We got introduced to these things this summer. We got a busy schedule here. It is overwhelming. I'm always having to adjust the calendar, add radio appointments. You and I are switching our times. I don't need a lot of distractions and a lack of energy to get in my way. And man, this stuff is great to help you with that. The nice folks at MagicMind reached out to me this spring, said, sample our product. It'll help you with those things. And guess what? It has. What MagicMind is, it is a mental performance shot that keeps you clear and motivated and reduces stress. It's helped me gain a clear head and focus throughout a bunch of stressful and hectic days. It's not a coffee replacement. There are no quick fixes, but it is an addition to your morning routine with time release caffeine. If you like the science behind it, 12 all natural ingredients, completely safe. They support your body's energy engine, mushroom nootropics, and adaptogens. Over 100% of your daily vitamin C and D in every bottle. Doctor validated with over 200 scientific studies behind every ingredient. They donate 5 cents of every bottle to mental health charities that help homeless communities in the United States. They are so confident that they will refund your money 100%, no questions asked. If you don't like it, check out MagicMind. You can get 48% off a subscription with the code Southeastern20 or 20% off a one-time purchase. Try MagicMind where flow state awaits.
We're going to chat with Jason Campbell coming up in just a few minutes from the Auburn Sports Network. Of course, Auburn, great quarterback. Spent a lot of time in the NFL as well. But he's going to join us in just a little bit. But something we did last week, we're going to do it every week here on the show, and that is our SEC fantasy football teams. We're going to keep track of this. We drafted players last week, and Chris is going to give us, Chris tallied the points. He's going to give us an update here, and we're going to have a chance to trade if we want to, or keep the guys we have. We'll have two swaps a week, or we can trade for guys. But we're gonna do that right now. All right, Chris Lee, what does fantasy football look like for us this week?
Well, Chase, this was a close week, and I wasn't sure it was going to be after after some of what your guys did. I mean, Jalen Milroe, my God, thank God Alabama didn't keep him in the whole time, or I'd have been toast. You also had Deon Burks on Thursday night. I'm like, oh man, you picked him with your first receiver pick. I am really screwed here. So I'm looking at what these guys are doing, and I'm just going. I have no chance against what you've done this week. But one little thing here, I don't know what happened with Jordan Watkins last week.
Mm.
But unless I missed it, he didn't have any stats. And so and oh, by the way, Texas, they pitch a shutout. Now, no sacks, and that helped a little bit, but you had a very strong start. I mean, really the only bone to pick here was you didn't get much out of Jordan Watkins. I don't know what happened there. But anyway, that's it, pretty strong performance otherwise.
Yeah, and I was pretty pleased as I was keeping up with all these players and teams that I don't know what the deal was with Jordan Watkins, and I've been trying to I know it came out shortly before kickoff that he would not play in that game. They did not give a reason. It was not listed of why he was not playing. I'm not going to make any speculations, but we'll see if he's back this week. But that hurt not having him, but other guys on my team made up for it for sure.
Well, fortunately, also had some shares in the Ole Miss offense, which was much needed because, my goodness, Gavin Sawchuk left the game in the first quarter. I'd counted a lot on him. I think he was he may have been my first pick of the whole draft. I can't remember now. No, I think Trey Harris was. And boy, look what Harris and Jackson Dart did in a half. Jackson Dart
Wow.
was incredible. I didn't get a lot out of Luke Haas, but here's the other guy that saved me. Dylan Sampson had a big day. There's some teams, they get their guys out quickly, and there's some teams that let their guys stay in and accumulate some numbers. Fortunately for me, I picked half a roster from two coaches that believe in doing that. I had Georgia's defense. They didn't pitch a shutout, but they did get a couple turnovers. And guess what? I would not have believed it, but Chase, I beat you week one.
Wow. Okay. So Chris got the week one win. And again, Jordan Watkins really hurt me.
Yeah.
Him not playing. I had a lot of confidence in him, but your receiver picks were really good, and you both got a lot out of them. All right, Chris, do you want to make any trades this week?
By the way, I take that back. Luther Burden was my first pick. Well, let's
That's right.
decide some rules here because I think
Okay. Yes.
there's going to be some bye weeks, and I don't want to. I don't think it's kind of against the spirit of the competition if I'm having to cut a quarterback or a star running
Yes.
back, or else take a zero. Let's build in maybe a few reserve spots. What do you say?
I'm good with that. I'm good with
And
that.
just make a reserve. How many you want to do? Two, three,
Uh,
four?
let's go 2
Okay. I think we might need, well, let's see. We
or
got
3.
September 21st, we got Alabama and Georgia on buys. Those are going to be some teams we use. Week 5, we've got Florida, Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, Vandy on buys. The next week you've got 5 or 6 teams on. I mean, we've got at least 2 teams on bye week every week between now and the end of the season.
Yeah. We'll go 3.
Let's go 3, and if we need to change later, we can do it. I had the first pick in the draft, so I will give you first pick this time for reserves.
Okay, let's see here.
And I'll also add this, Chase. If you want to cut anybody, you can get an extra pick at the end of that.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to cut anybody.
Okay.
But I am going to get let's see here. Give me Brew McCoy from Tennessee.
Okay.
And I will write
Goodness.
this down and keep track of this.
I've got a couple guys I'm thinking of at the moment. Hmm. There's some receivers out there I like. I kind of need a running back too, though. But I'm not sure who the pick would be.
It's tough.
It is, because you've got a lot of committee situations and a lot of backs that are hurt.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna take a chance. I don't think I'm gonna need him. Well, give me ETN from Georgia,
Okay.
because I thought about picking him last week.
Yeah. And I think that's a strong player to go with there. Um, all right, let's see. I will take. This is tough. Mm, 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 mm. I'm going to go Marcus Carroll, Missouri, running back.
Oh, good call. I should have thought of that one, to be honest. I don't know what ETN's suspension situation's like. I haven't looked that up, and they got Tennessee Tech this week, but
Yeah.
I'm going longer term play. I'm a little worried about Saltchuk, because they've also got a soft schedule too.
Yeah.
Um, Man, it's not a position of need, but I think, man, I've got to go Nico. If
Mm,
nothing else, to play a little defense and keep you from getting him at some point.
yes. I thought about I thought about getting him as well. Um, hmm. My last one here. Um, Man, this is tough. Thinking who I need. I'm gonna go with another receiver, and I will go Kendrick Law of Alabama.
Oh, yeah, I actually thought about taking an Alabama receiver, and that was not the one I was thinking of taking. Um, and I'm probably not going to take a receiver just based on the fact that I got Trey Harris and Luther Burden. I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah.
Plus, plus they've got I think Burden's got 3 more weeks before they're off. I mean, they're not going to have a bye week for a bit. Man, I feel like I'm forgetting somebody here. Um, I'm just nervous about running back because of the situation with a couple of guys. I'm just not sure when they're going to play. Um, and I'll be surprised if you have this one on your board, but I'm going to take a chance because I love the way that offense looked in week 1. Give me Jaquindon Jackson of Arkansas.
Okay. All right. Jaquindon Jackson going to Chris. All right. So we got our 3 reserves now uh, solidified. And so we'll see what happens here in our fantasy football. This is going to be fun because
Yeah.
it was a good week 1 for us.
It was, and it goes to show how much offense is in this league. And oh, by the way, our defensive picks. How many teams did you have picked shutouts in week 1?
Right.
Maybe I guess you're pretty happy when your defenses are Texas and Georgia, but maybe that's something we slept on. Maybe there's a defense out there worth being picked up. I think this is going to be a super fun year. I think this is a place where this would have been fun anyway, but just adding Oklahoma and Texas to the conference
Yep.
really makes it a lot of fun. There are so many good dudes to choose from.
There are a lot of good dudes to choose from. So we will do this every week here on the SEC Football Hour with our SEC Fantasy Football. All right, so the Auburn Tigers, big win over Alabama A&M on Saturday. They have Cal this week. We had a chance to catch up with Auburn great, longtime Auburn quarterback, spent some time in the NFL, now with the Auburn Sports Network. You can hear him alongside Andy Burcham for the games on the Auburn Radio Network. Jason Campbell joined us. Let's listen into our conversation with Jason Campbell. And we're going to talk some Auburn football now. We got former quarterback Auburn great there, Jason Campbell, now with the Auburn Sports Network. You can hear him on the radio broadcast. But Jason, appreciate you coming on, talking some Auburn football with us today.
I appreciate it, Chase and Chris. Like I said, we had a game last week, but it's not the magnitude of USC, LSU, and Miami, Florida, and all those type of teams. But it was a good warm up game for us.
Now you got Cal this week, and it was an interesting game last year. It was going across the country to Cal, taking on the Bears. Now they return trip this year. Just from what I saw last week, it looks like a much different Auburn team. Just where do you see this Auburn team at going into this game this year versus Cal rather than last year?
Yeah, last season that was a long ride. First and foremost, so team flew out there, got out there 2 days early, and it was a 9:30, 10 o'clock kickoff for our guys, PM, which was like a 7 o'clock game West Coast. And guys talked about it like it's kind of hard to get your body to stay afloat, and especially a 10 o'clock game. We had guys cramping up, believe it or not, even in that late of a game, and everything. Keontae Scott couldn't even finish the game last year, and he's from California. And so,
Wow.
the time change was a huge, huge difference. I think we kind of let them off the hook a little bit, having a 2:30 game, which for them is just like a 12:30 game because it's only a 2-hour time difference. But it's an early game, not a late game, and it's not going to be as hot as it was this past weekend. So it's going to be great football weather, low 80s. But two teams, I feel like Cal now being part of ACC. Anytime you beat a team in their territory, they want to come back the next year and try to revenge that loss. So our team has got to be ready. To me, like I said, last week for this team was preseason game. This week is the opening season game for me, because last week was to get the young receivers, to get all our young guys some touches, make them feel comfortable. But they'll notice this week it's going to be a little bit of a different ball game when they go against Cal.
Jason, you've played in games like the one last week. I mean, it was a 73-3 blowout over Alabama A&M. I think they shortened the third and fourth quarters. Is that correct?
Yeah, they shortened the third and fourth quarter to 10 minutes. I didn't know you could do that, but the
Yeah.
refs, I guess they said it's in the rule book that you can shorten it to 10 minutes. Third and fourth quarters, a mercy rule if the opponent concedes to it.
Yeah, Arkansas did that too, by the way. So they weren't the only SEC team to do that. But I mean, you can get away with stuff, mistakes, sloppy play against a team like that you can't get away with, even against lower level SEC teams. Having said that, I felt like this is a game like if it's last year's Auburn team, maybe it's a 45-3 game. That was kind of my takeaway, that there maybe you can take a little bit away from it with meaning, but what do you feel like has staying power in terms of what you saw last week?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Last year's Auburn team would have been a 45-3, would have been an interesting first half. Would have made it closer than what it
Yeah.
should have been. But this team is totally different. You just look at our receivers. Our receivers are night and day above what we had a year ago, and we only returned two receivers from a roster last year, and that's Camden Brown and Caleb Burton. Everybody else are brand new receivers. You look at Cam Coleman. Even though he only had two catches, this guy's already could be one of the top receivers in this conference, even as a freshman. Like, he's that type of talent. And then you look at Lambert Smith, the transfer from Penn State, the veteran there. He's a great guy to have in that locker room to help bring those young guys like Perry Thompson and Bryce Kane and Malcolm Simmons. Now, Malcolm Simmons is the freakish athlete. Out of all those guys, this guy can, he got a punt return for a touchdown. I mean, a punt block for a touchdown. So there's guys and there's pieces to take from this team. What excited me the most, guys, was that defense. That
Yeah.
defense was flying around, and you know that's what they build their hat off of, is speed and quickness. And you think about the guys that we have this year, the front seven is really good. We have three seniors starting at linebacker. So that's the core and the teeth for our defense. Our secondary is a good secondary. We just don't have a lot of depth. But if we can stay healthy, we can compete with anyone. But offensively, though, I was excited to see the ball get passing there. We averaged 161 yards passing last year per game. And so Coach Freeze wanted to put an emphasis on, we know we can run the football when we get into tough games, but we got to be able to build confidence through Peyton Thorne and the receivers as we move down the stretch. So if anyone watched the game, they saw there was a huge emphasis on, let's just throw the ball around, make sure everyone gets touches, make sure Peyton, starts the season off hot and get himself into a confidence booster. That was done on purpose because we're going to need those passing games when we get in these tough ball games.
And I'm curious, you've played a lot of games at quarterback. What is that like, starting the season, getting confidence? How important is that? Just what's the mindset of a quarterback going into a new season and in a year, Peyton Thorne, where he's looking for some improvement?
Well, for one, I say this: last year Peyton got here in June, so
Mm.
he missed all the spring last year, and that's an important piece. Where this year he had an opportunity to be there for everything, spring and winter drills. The second thing to me is he's not looking over his shoulder. Last year he was kind of in a rotation, every other series type deal. First couple of games with him and Robbie Ashford, and no one can really get in a rhythm as a quarterback doing that. And especially you feel like you make a mistake, you may be coming out of it. So I just feel like for him alone, that giving him a lot of first being comfortable, second confidence, and then to just let it loose. And for him to start off the season with 4 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions, it's a big deal, because now you feel like you're batting ahead in the pecking order. And he got a rush touchdown. So yeah, could a lot of guys got out there and done that against the team we were playing against? Yes, but at the same time, you have to do that as a coach, knowing that Peyton was really good at Michigan State. How do we get him back to being a quarterback that he was at Michigan State? And I think a lot of that was what you saw Coach Freeze do the other night.
Jason, I heard Hugh Freeze talk in the offseason about how much he and Peyton Thorne were on the same page when they watched film and things like that. And Peyton just like that picked up on stuff. You were a quarterback in this league at Auburn, obviously, in a very good one. When you watch him, where do you see improvements, whether it's decision making, mechanics, anything where you see him better than he was a year ago?
Well, last year we knew he could run, right? So I think last people didn't realize like the athlete that he was, and I think he showcased that last year with his scrambling, with his design runs that they had in the game plan. What I liked the other night that I liked was his down the field passing was more accurate. He had two post routes right in strides, or last year those kind of like long foul balls. Where guys didn't have a
Mhm.
chance to get the ball, it was way overthrown or thrown behind them, they had to slow down and everything, where it looked a lot more in depth from a timing perspective with him and the receivers on balls down the field. So that to me was a good sign to see, because even back in the spring when I watched some of their practice, some of those balls were still going way over their head and out of bounds. And now you can tell like they've been working really hard on creating timing between him and the receivers.
You mentioned defensive personnel a minute ago, and I know again against Alabama A&M, you probably can't learn a ton of what Auburn's going to be doing moving forward. They may not have shown a lot, but defensively, how did you see things different with DJ Durkin now leading the defense? Was there anything noticeably different about Auburn's defense with the new staff?
Yeah, DJ Durkin is a no nonsense type of guy. You see him on the sideline just ripping cats. They come off the field after 3 and out, and he's still like just ripping them. That what makes great defenses. That what makes guys competitive, because he knows the same thing you just said, Chase. You can get away with a lot of things against Alabama A&M, but you won't get away against Arkansas, Oklahoma, Cal, Bama, Georgia, all these other teams that when your schedule continues to go and it continues to get harder, those little things can catch up with you. So he's constantly honing in on these guys on the little things and being in the right place at the right time. And I think his biggest pickup this offseason was Dorn, the linebacker from Duke. Like, he's very smart, he's intelligent, he helps gets everybody lined up on defense. He's a great leader. And then you put him with Eugene and on that defense as well with Austin Keys, two other linebackers. Like, that linebacker core is really, really good. And our biggest question mark coming into this season was, after you lose Justin Rogers, you lose Marcus Harris and some guys off the defensive line, was what was Auburn's defensive front going to look like this year? And I think they answered that, because you go through spring ball and you say, okay, you had Gage Keys, you got Trill Carter. Gage Keys came over from Kansas, Trill Carter came over from Texas. So you're saying, okay, we got two guys up front, but you go through spring and say, this is not going to get it done completely in the SEC. We need to get more and add more depth. So then at that point, you go out and you get a defensive lineman from Arkansas State and Keyron. You go get him, and then you go get Isaiah Rakes, from USC to come in, that Coach Durkin that coached before. And then you go and you get Philip Bleedy, the big time defensive tackle from Indiana. Now you got those three guys, and you plug them into the other two guys that you brought in the spring, along with Malik Blockton and some of these freshmen that are highly touted. Now you give yourself a great rotation, which I saw the other night. We was able to rotate guys in and not miss a beat. That's going to be a key, and we'll see how much of that continues this week against Cal.
Jason, I'm looking at the tackle sheet from that game, and obviously in a blowout like that, you get some guys a lot of time that maybe they wouldn't get otherwise. But I'm looking like Sylvester Smith,
Mhm.
what, 4 tackles in the opener? I think that's one more than he had all last year. Robert Woodyard, guys like that maybe weren't household names coming into the season. Give me a couple names on that defense that you think are going to really pop by season's end.
Yeah, you mentioned Sylvester Smith. Sylvester Smith was a redshirt freshman last year. He came in, he's a guy with a lot of talent. He can talk his way to anybody's room. He's just that type of kid. To see him out there making plays, we're going to need to count on him in the secondary this year from a depth perspective. Just because he has that kind of time, but he's one of those redshirt freshmen. Jay Crawford, another highly touted freshman, true freshman this year, that we got out of Atlanta, Georgia, this past signing class. He's going to have to play a lot for us at that defensive back spot, coming in with the second group of guys, spelling these starters sometimes. He's the guy that's got to show up and show up big for us. You talk about Champ Anthony. Champ Anthony is another one that he's placed a nickel star position, they call it, on this defense. Champ was used to playing a little bit of safety. Now he's his second year here from JUCO, and now he's going to line up in the slot. He's a longer nickel guy. I think that's going to help us in that area. But getting Jaron Thompson from Texas was a huge get at the safety position. He's come in here and he's instantly become one of the leaders on that defense. And he's going to be the catalyst back there in the secondary. But Keontae Scott, made no mistake about it. He's the one that controls that secondary. He's the one that get those guys going. He's also our punt returner. But there's a lot of young guys. Kyan Lee last year started his first 3 games of the season as a freshman while Nehemiah Pritchard was hurt, and played the rest of the year coming in and out. He's now a full-time starter. in his true second year here. So there's a lot of young guys in that secondary that we're gonna have to depend on. Some of them got experience last year, some of them didn't. Like Sylvester Smith, he didn't. He played in the bowl game. That was about it. This year, he comes as a redshirt freshman, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people can keep an eye on. He's going to help us a lot.
I'm curious, Jason, when I look at the Auburn schedule, I don't know if I've ever seen a schedule like this. First 5 games at home, 3 on the road, back at home for 3, and then you end the season on the road. I feel like it's hard after the first 5 games of the season. It's going to be kind of hard to get in a rhythm of playing at home. It's a bizarre schedule.
Yeah, it's people look at that and they say, "Oh, it's great. You get 5 home games in a row." It's actually kind of hard because you got to recruit. You got to bring in recruits for 5 weekends straight. And then on top of that, you have to. These guys haven't been on the road yet, and by the time you get into the teeth of your schedule, we think about 3 road games at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. Like that's not an easy gauntlet. And then you come back home against Vanderbilt, A&M, and I think we got one more game in there, and then you go play Bama. So I think in 2022 we had 5 straight home games. I think that might have been the last time. I don't know why the SEC keep giving us 5 straight home games, but but it's the second time in 3 years this has happened. Coach Freeze has made it known that he had nothing to do with it. That this was put out by the conference, especially with the conference realignment this year. That's why we ended up with 5 straight home games.
I think a lot of teams would kill for that schedule, but
Yeah.
yeah, that is an odd thing. You don't see that often. Back to offense, so for a minute, I mean, Hugh Freeze is probably got to be the guy that's happiest about what he saw week 1. But behind that, I think it would have to be Jarquez Hunter, who, he has put up some numbers with teams going, "Hey, I don't know that we respect your passing game." If they can do that, how good a back is he going to be this year?
Yeah, you talk about Auburn last year, right? Rushed for over 200 yards against Georgia.
Yeah,
One of the most stout defenses in college football, and then did it again against Bama, in the Iron Bowl. So you talk about 2 defenses that known and build themselves off of stopping the run. We rushed the football very well against them. The problem was we struggled in the passing game. And Jarquez has got to be sitting there feeling good, even though he only had like 4 touches. He's got to be sitting there feeling good about himself. Like, I came out of this game fresh. I barely touched the field a little bit. And now my season really starts this week against Cal. And if our passing game can continue to, everyone knows we're not going to throw for 400 yards every week, but if we can throw for 250, 225, 250, and, with Cam Coleman and Lambert Smith and Perry Thompson, those guys, and Simmons, then if we can do that on a regular basis, have a passing game that's stability wise, but also I would probably say just looks constant, not something that's goes
yeah.
this week. We're really good in passing game. The next week we only throw for 100 yards. You can't have that type of wave. Is what I'm saying. Like if we can have something where each week you sit in the pocket, you see a throw that got to count on 3rd down, and we're not airmailing over a guy's head or we're not dropping it. If we can make the consistent plays when they're there, that's the only thing you look for in this passing game: consistency. If we find consistency goes our run game, man, like this offense can really, really explode. And I think Auburn at that point can find themselves at least at the end of the year, maybe in the top 12 if they can get hot.
Yeah.
Should be interesting. Should be fun this week. Auburn and Cal down at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Jason Campbell, really appreciate you coming on, talking some Auburn football with us for a few minutes. Hope you enjoy this weekend. We'll catch up with you again soon, but thanks for coming on today.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for having me.
That was Auburn legend Jason Campbell. A lot of good things to say about this Auburn team heading into the game against Cal. And Jason Campbell was so much fun to watch. What a great quarterback that Auburn had in Jason Campbell.
Yeah, led them to some big wins, and I think was SEC Offensive Player of the Year his senior year too, and was a first-round draft pick. So we're lucky to have Jason on.
Yeah, appreciate his time. Let's roll into our final segment today, and that is likely or unlikely, where we will share 2 scenarios apiece and see if they're likely or unlikely. I'll go first. After what we saw from Florida on Saturday, Chris, really disappointing, unimpressive performance from the Gators against Miami. Graham Mertz on concussion protocol, DJ Lagway will be the quarterback for the Gators this week against Samford. Likely or unlikely, Lagway becomes the primary starter for the Gators.
I thought you were going to ask me another question, but I think, goodness, hard to do that to Graham Mertz, but my gut tells me yes. They just need something to look forward to at this point.
Yeah. And I think if DJ Lagway goes out there and puts together some good performances and however long Graham Mertz is out, or even if it's just this one game, I think he could get himself into that conversation, whether it'll happen or not.
Yeah.
I think conversations will be happening because they've got to do something to at least to get a little spark to get something going.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to follow to me.
All right, my question for you, likely or unlikely, and I'll give you a postseason for this too. Auburn gets to 9 wins. You were higher on Auburn than I was before the season. I did think the schedule was more favorable than most teams. Again, don't want to go overboard with what they did against Alabama A&M, but it feels like maybe there's some answers there. You might have had Auburn at 9 wins anyway, for all I know, but I'm just going to give you that. Likely or unlikely that Auburn, when everything is said and done with the season, has won 9 games.
I'm smiling right now, Chris, because that is exactly what I had written down for
Oh,
my
no
second
kidding.
scenario. We've been doing this too much together, I guess. We know what we're gonna say, so I'm gonna have to think of something on the fly. But that was my exact question to you. They get 9 wins.
I'll tell you what. I'll take it, and I'll think of another one. I've got a number 2 in mind, but I think I'm going to go likely at this point. That
Yeah,
Kentucky game was kind of a toss up. That's on the road, but I give them a little more of a shot at winning that. I'm not any more down on Kentucky. The Oklahoma game that's in Auburn. I love Oklahoma still, but I want to see a little bit more on offense from them. I think that A&M game that looks more winnable now. I think that's a home game. Yeah, I just think it feel now maybe Vandy got a little harder, but
yeah.
I think some things the sky got a little brighter between now and last Saturday for the Auburn Tigers. I feel.
I think so too. Like I would say likely. I think they do get to 9 wins. Based on, and again, they were playing Alabama A&M. And again, there hasn't been any injuries yet. Hopefully there's not, but right now, this Auburn team just looks so different from last year and
Yeah.
in a very good way. Like, and I keep saying this and everything every time we talk about Auburn, they have receivers this year. They have guys that Peyton Thorne can consistently go to. They hit, 8 guys or whatever on Saturday, 8 receivers. This is a much better Auburn team, and I think they're going to be fun to watch. So yes, I would say likely they get to 9 wins.
All right, likely or unlikely, and you tell me. I can't remember if 5 wins still can get you a bowl or not with APR rules, but Vanderbilt makes a bowl, likely or unlikely.
You know what? I'm all in on Vanderbilt right now. I'm going to say
Wow.
likely. I think they do. I think they find ways to win games because they have the competitor of Diego Pavia that they have.
Yeah.
And look, Jerry Kill, we've seen what he's done in college football. He's won some big games. He's a really smart guy. Now he's had he's battled his health issues, and so he hasn't been consistently at the top of college football. He did great at New Mexico State last year. And I think he's a great addition to the staff that Clark Lee needed to run the offense. Clark Lee can focus on the defense. I think that team together, the coaching staff of who Clark Lee has brought in, is going to get them to a bowl game.
We did the fantasy draft, and you might see one of us roster Diego Pavia for a week or two. I
I
mean,
thought
ran for
about it.
104 last. I did too. Was in the back of my head, but I'm like, I can't pass up all these. I mean, we still hadn't gotten to Carson Beck yet, which is crazy because he
Yeah,
doesn't run a
that's
lot. But I
true.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah, they are. I did not think I was going to be saying this, but Vandy is actually fun to watch this year.
they are. Yes, I loved watching Diego Pavia the other day against Virginia Tech, and I liked watching him last year when he came to
Yeah.
Auburn. I watched covered Jacksonville State, watched New Mexico State, Jacksonville State play, and really liked what I saw from him last year and now at Vanderbilt. Just so much fun to watch there. So I would take likely Vanderbilt gets to a bowl game.
All right. Have you got another one for me?
Yeah. Let me rack my brain for a second here.
Well, I'll give you one.
Okay.
And again, this maybe falls in the maybe we overreacted to what we saw in week 1 against a pretty much helpless opponent, but Tennessee makes the college football playoff.
I'm gonna. That's tough.
That's why I asked you.
That is tough. Um, I will go. Oh, man. I'm gonna go unlikely.
Yeah, I mean they've got to go to Georgia. That's looking
Yep.
tough. Alabama at home, I kind of circle that as one of the upsets, but boy, after Alabama looked that good, Oklahoma, I still feel like we got a little bit of the jury out on that one. I think that is. I don't know that I have an answer either, but I wanted to ask to hear what you thought
Yeah.
because I think
I,
that is a really interesting question.
It really is, and one that I wouldn't be surprised either way. I wouldn't be surprised if they've made it. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't win enough to get in it. But they're gonna be fun to watch. They're gonna be fascinating to follow. Just the whole story of Tennessee football this year. So that should be fun. That is all the time we have for you on this 13th episode of the SEC Football Hour. We do this every week in conjunction with the rest of the SEC football videos we put out. I mean, we have game predictions that go out early in the week to get you ready for the games. We have a reaction Saturday night. We have videos going out all the time for SEC football, basketball, and baseball. So subscribe to our channel and like this video, share it with your friends. If you would be interested in advertising with us, sponsoring our content, caroline.smith at southeastern14.com is who you can contact about that. Would love to have you a part of that as we cover SEC sports year around. For Chris Lee, I'm Chase Robinson. This is the SEC Football Hour, and Southeastern 16 is presented to you by BetOnline.